All right. Look, it's time for a gem.
Yeah. Hold on.
You got it?
Yeah. Ooh.
Ooh.
I like that. A little more high energy.
You want to try
honestly.
it? Try it. Try the high energy version.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, do that.
All right.
It doesn't. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, I wanted to talk about, there's two big trade stories that have been going on this week. And we got to hit them because there's a lot of nonsense going on. So first, let's talk about China and this, what they're calling the Phase 1 agreement, which is essentially just a truce between the United States and China. Obviously, they've been hitting each other with tariffs and really threatening a lot of, economic instability. So, let's really think about what's going on underneath the scenes. First, let's start with Silicon Valley. From the very beginning, this fight with China has really been about technology. They say there's a lot of other issues, but it's about Silicon Valley corporations wanting to have their intellectual property and basically their right to have, monopoly stakes in the global economy protected by the United States' powerful political position. And the fact is that China is, a massive economy with a growing tech sector. And of course, that there's going to be conflict between the United States and competition with the United States. So the assumption that, and this was, Richard Wolff talked about this too when he was on the show, this sort of implicit deal with China and US tech companies was, right, we're going to, you guys can come here and exploit our labor, but we're also going to start learning a little bit and have, access to technology and build our own growing tech sector. And now that China is starting to threaten that, now there's all this, oh my God, the Chinese are thieves and they're stealing. I'm not saying that everything that the Chinese are doing, by the way, is above water, but it's this the general assumption that there's something super malicious about Chinese strategy is absolutely wrong. So what happens when Trump comes in is that Trump just bumbles around and makes a complete fool of himself and really just pushes this conflict to a head and has created this disastrous situation. But the fact is that even with this deal, one of the most important things was that China agreed to a lot more, that they're going to self-police themselves much more when it comes to United States intellectual property for the benefit of Silicon Valley corporations. And let's remember that technology, specifically, is an industry that's very good at protecting its own profits, and it's not the kind that trickles down well at all. So there's been a lot of behind the scenes.
It's a pure artificial scarcity.
Yeah, and it's and a lot of the tech companies, have been behind the scenes sort of lobbying the Trump, government, and a lot of the things that Trump has been doing for them on the long term are probably be beneficial. And just real quick too, let's also not forget that, this conflict with China has been boiling for a long time under the water. Obama pushed had the pivot to Asia. And the idea there was that even though there's all these countries that are mainly trading partners of China, the United States was going to use its political power to, reassert itself. And that's what was behind TPP. And lastly, with regards to China, the fact is that we're seeing a massive trade slowdown, and that was because globalization drove that. And what was the main function what was one of the driving forces behind globalization was this access to cheap labor in Asia. And what we're seeing is we're actually seeing slowdowns in production across these low wage areas because it was sort of like a blip that happened in these areas that were very much underdeveloped. And as they start to get developed, that model doesn't work as well. And lastly, about this whole conversation with the global trade with China and Asia in general is that when we talk about trade, we need to be talking about climate change. And the fact is that the reason that this model worked at all was because we were shipping everything across the Pacific, and that eats up an incredible amount of energy. And it really has, not just the oil, right, but the production itself is a huge, has a huge impact on climate change. And of course, Donald Trump and all these people will have no interest in that. Now, I just want to get to this as well too. NAFTA 2 is another great example of this.
Talking
problem.
More about this in the post game.
Yeah, just hitting it real quick is Bernie Sanders is 100% correct to call out the the failure of this deal to address climate change. Let's also not forget that even though people like Elizabeth Warren are saying, well, we shouldn't throw out a deal that has mild improvements because it's not perfect. Let's not forget that these deals fundamentally just put corporations and corporate rights above nations. And, if we want to implement the kind of programs that Bernie Sanders wants to implement, these deals will be a problem, and it will be something that we will have to fight against. And that's why Bernie Sanders is absolutely correct to oppose them. The fact is that this economic model is not going to be able to revive itself under the old rules of capitalism. It's not going to be able to revive itself through ridiculous trade deals like NAFTA too. Bernie Sanders is 100% right to oppose it, and this is a great example of the different trajectory that this democratic socialist movement is pushing, because we see this deal, it gets bipartisan support, and when you have bipartisan support, that should be something that should make you very nervous. It's exactly what this whole deal has been about, was the status quo, which is that corporations are running policy in Washington, and you can see that synthesis and that unity when the Democratic Party doesn't even make its stink about Donald Trump, somebody who they're literally trying to impeach. They give him everything he wants when it comes to global trade and the economy. Well, they decry his attitudes and his behavior or whatever, but no fundamental difference in structure.
Yeah. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.